There's a question that's been haunting scientists, philosophers, and honestly, anyone who's ever looked into an animal's eyes and wondered just what are they thinking?
Which animals have the capacity for conscious experience? Not just instinct, not just reaction, but awareness, emotion, and intention.
And while there's still a lot we don't know, some points of agreement are starting to take shape.
First, there's strong scientific support that other mammals and birds experience consciousness, not metaphorically, not wishful thinking, but in ways we can observe and measure.
Second, the evidence suggests there's at least a realistic possibility of conscious experience across all vertebrates. Reptiles, amphibians, fish, and even many invertebrates, octopuses. Is that
Octopi.
is that I was gonna say,
It's
isn't it
octopi.
octopi?
I changed it on mine.
I have read that out loud probably 6 times, and I didn't catch how bad it sounded until that time.
Octopuses.
Octopuses, decapod crustaceans, insects, creatures we once dismissed as simple are showing signs of something far more complex.
And third, when there's a realistic possibility that an animal is conscious, it becomes irresponsible to ignore that possibility. Their stress, their comfort, their choices, all of it matters because consciousness, whatever form it takes, carries weight.
Today, we're stepping into that liminal space where science, instinct, and mystery overlap.
We're talking about animals that communicate with humans in ways we still can't fully explain.
Animals that cross mountains, highways, and hundreds of miles of unfamiliar terrain just to find their way back home.
And animals whose minds might be far richer and far stranger than we've ever allowed ourselves to believe.
I am Michelle.
And I am Isaiah, and today we're asking what if the creatures around us are more aware, more connected, and more intentional than we ever imagined?
Before we get into communication, intuition, and the strange ways animals navigate the world, we want to start with a story, a true one that still leaves scientists shrugging their shoulders.
It begins in early November in 2012 at an RV rally in Daytona Beach, Florida. Crowds, engines, music. Hardly a place for a house cat. Except Holly Richter was there with her family, Jacob and Bonnie.
Holly was a 4-year old tortie, strictly indoors, and on that day, something startled her. A noise, a movement, no one's really sure. She bolted, and in the chaos of the rally, she vanished.
The Richters searched. Flyers and calls, walking the grounds, talking to anyone who would listen. But Daytona Beach is 200 miles from their home in West Palm Beach. 200 miles. And Holly had never been outside long enough to explore her own backyard, let alone a city she'd never seen.
Days passed, then weeks, the kind of time that makes even the most hopeful pet owners start to accept the worst. Florida is full of predators, traffic, storms, and Holly was out there alone.
But here's where the story stops behaving the way stories are supposed to. Because on New Year's Eve, almost 2 months after she disappeared, a homeowner in West Palm Beach noticed something in their backyard.
A cat, staggering, weak, emaciated, barely able to stand. She was a mile, just 1 mile from the Richter's house. And when they scanned her microchip, it was Holly.
200 miles across highways, swamps, neighborhoods, and cities. No map, no familiar sense, no reason she should have known which direction to go. And yet, she came home.
Scientists still don't have a satisfying explanation. Cats aren't known for long distance homing the way some birds or dogs are, and Holly had no outdoor experience to draw from. But something guided her, something beyond instinct, something that suggests animals may have internal worlds, internal maps that we barely understand.
Holly's journey forces us to rethink what animals know and how they know it. Because whatever guided her across 200 miles wasn't random. It wasn't luck. It was something internal, something we don't fully understand.
And Holly isn't the only animal who's challenged our assumptions. Some animals don't just navigate the world in mysterious ways, some communicate in ways that blur the line between instinct and intention.
Which brings us to one of the most surprising cases in modern animal science, a beluga whale named Nock.
Nock lived at the National Marine Mammal Foundation in San Diego. He was young, curious, and surrounded by humans every day. And for years, researchers noticed something strange. When people worked near his tank, they sometimes heard what sounded like muffled human speech coming from the water. And I think we have some of that audio.
At first, they thought it was a diver, or a radio, or someone playing a prank, but it wasn't. It was Nock.
Belugas are known as canaries of the sea because of their wide range of vocalizations. But Nock wasn't just vocalizing. He was producing sounds that mimicked the rhythm and tone of human speech so convincingly that a diver once surfaced because he thought someone was yelling at him to get out. That would freak me out. If I'm
Yeah,
in a tank and I heard someone yelling, get out, you know?
yeah. Well, I mean, the whale just wanted some private time.
I wonder if he was trying to sound like he was saying get out, if he knows what get out
I
means.
mean, considering what we're saying that Nock is able to do, I mean, it's very possible.
Sneaky.
No, it's just the diver that's just not understanding that he's being told to get out.
Right, right. Get out of my room.
That sounded like he was telling me to get out. That silly whale.
Yeah. And he just wanted to be alone the whole time.
Yep. Scientists recorded Nock's sounds and analyzed them. They found he was manipulating the pressure in his nasal cavities, essentially reshaping his vocal tract to imitate human like patterns. Not perfect words, but close enough that trained researchers mistook them for a person.
And here's the part that still sparks debate. Nock didn't do this constantly, he did it in social contexts. When humans were nearby, when he seemed to want attention, or when he was interacting with his caretakers. That's a funny way to interact with them. Get out.
It wasn't random noise, it was targeted, purposeful, a whale adjusting his own biology to sound more like the creatures he lived with.
Nock's case raises the same question Holly's journey does, just from a different angle. What's happening inside an animal's mind when it does something that shouldn't be possible?
Is it imitation? Is it curiosity? Is it a form of communication we're only beginning to recognize?
I know of one case that was definitely not imitation, and that's the story of Alex, the African gray parrot. Alex was the longtime research partner of Dr. Irene Pepperberg. Her work overturned the old belief that birds were unintelligent bird brains. Over 30 years, Alex demonstrated cognitive abilities comparable to a 2 to 6 year old human child. Pepperberg bought Alex from a Chicago pet store in 1977 to avoid any suggestion she'd chosen a gifted bird. Using her model rival training method, Alex learned by watching two trainers alternate roles, showing him that communication was interactive. As he advanced, he even corrected trainers' mistakes and later helped teach other parrots. Alex learned over 100 words, recognized more than 50 objects, and could identify colors, shapes, materials, and quantities up to 6. He also showed an understanding of zero and could correctly label new objects by combining known concepts. For example, distinguishing a yellow plastic key from a metal one while still calling both of them key. His personality often surfaced during repetitive trials. He'd deliberately give wrong answers or ask his own questions. Remarkably, he became the first non human ever documented asking a question, "What color?" after seeing himself in a mirror. He learned gray after 6 prompts. Alex died unexpectedly in 2007 at the age of 31. His final words to Pepperberg were, "You be good. See you tomorrow. I love you." His death drew national attention, but Pepperberg continued her research with other parrots. Alex left a legacy that reshaped ornithology, proving bird brains are far more complex than once believed. His training methods have also influenced human education, especially for children with learning differences. So, if a parrot can identify objects, understand zero, correct humans, and even ask a question about himself, what does that say about animal consciousness?
I think it's interesting because a lot of people, excuse me, there was people that were actually suggesting that, and these are academics that were very skeptical about Pepperberg's studies and stuff that she's
Mm-hmm.
done with Alex. They were simply saying that everything that Alex was going through with the communications and stuff was simply operant conditioning.
Mm, I don't know. I mean, I thought about that briefly because I did watch some videos where she would present some items and ask, among other questions, what color is that? But
Hmm.
usually the questions were, how many square green objects do you see? So he couldn't just say everything that was green. He could only, identify the objects that were square and green. There were differences made. So being asked repeatedly or numerous times at least what color something is may have prompted him when he looked in the mirror and saw an object which was himself, and he probably recognized as himself what color, because that's just a question that was often asked of him. So, you know, but
Well,
maybe he was also self-aware. I believe he was aware that that was definitely himself.
I considering what we've gone through and with the information, I would say that he was self-aware and he was showing signs of consciousness and
Mhm.
something beyond what people would consider birds to know or understand because with operant conditioning there would have to be an award system.
Yeah.
Okay, so if they did something that you wanted them to do, you give them something good. If they did something you didn't want, they would either be punished with no reward or something others. So they would learn to do something for the reward. But I don't think Pepperberg was actually using any sort of reward system. She was simply just working with them, and it was like teaching a child. Because from what I understand, from what I looked up with Alex, the parrot, was that he had a 2-year-old like an emotional level as a 2-year-old,
Right.
and an educational understanding of a 5-year-old. So
Yeah.
it's fairly smart.
Right. The videos I saw, I did not see any type of reward.
Hmm.
What I did see a few times when they were working, he would ask, "Go back," which I assume to mean, I want to be done with this. Can I go
Hmm.
back to, wherever, his cage or wherever he hangs out. And I see that that happens with kids too, especially kids that are in preschool and stuff like that, where you're doing an exercise with them, you're coloring a sheet, or in kindergarten you're doing your alphabet. Do this line, and then we can go outside. Do this line, and we can stop.
Hmm.
Or finish your food and you can go play. It's like
Sure,
you
sure.
you you need to do this and then you can be done, essentially. And if you want to look at anything as a reward, that's the only thing that I ever saw. But I don't think that that would necessarily be anything other than, we do this, and then when we're done, you can, whatever.
Right.
So I didn't see any reward, any kind of treat, food, or toy given to
Hmm.
him during all that.
Yeah, so that would say not operant conditioning, but a
Right.
lot of skeptics say there was an operant conditioning thing going on there. And she was working with Alex for so long. Like
Yeah.
he was, what was it, 30, 37, I think, when he died, or 40,
Yeah.
yeah, 37, which they say was probably it was arrhythmia that
Yeah.
he passed away from,
Yeah. I
fatal
thought that was
arrhythmia.
kind of young, actually.
Yeah, I mean, oh, 31. I'm sorry, 31, not 37. He's 31. He died in 2007. Yeah, I mean, he was around for a while, but usually parents like him lived to like in their 40s, mid 40s.
Yeah. Yeah. That's sad,
So,
though.
yeah. Anyway, it says the line we've drawn between human minds and animal minds is way blurrier than we thought. Alex wasn't just mimicking sounds, he was processing information, making choices, and showing awareness.
And not just awareness of the outside world. That mirror moment, asking what color about himself, that's a tiny spark of self recognition. Not full human style introspection, but definitely something more than instinct.
So once you accept that a bird with a brain the size of a walnut can do that, you have to rethink everything. What else is going on in the minds of animals we've underestimated? Fish, reptiles, insects?
Pepperberg's work basically forced scientists to admit that consciousness isn't a single switch that flips on only in humans. It's a spectrum. Different species might experience the world in different ways, but that doesn't mean they're empty inside.
And it raises ethical questions too. If an animal can understand, choose, get bored, ask questions, then its welfare matters in a much deeper way. You can't treat a mind like that as a biological machine.
Alex didn't just change bird research, he changed how we think about minds in general. He opened the door to asking better questions about communication, emotion, memory, all of the stuff we used to assume only humans had.
And honestly, he proved something simple but huge. Intelligence doesn't have to look like ours to be real.
The moment Alex recognized himself in the mirror reminded me of a video I saw years ago. There's this cat sitting on a bed, staring into a mirror that was across from him. He slowly ran his paws over each ear, watching the reflection do the same. It looked like he was testing the connection, matching his movements to what he saw, almost realizing, hey, that's me. Moments like that, Alex with the mirror, the cat matching his own movements, they make you wonder how many animals are having these tiny flashes of self awareness that we just never even notice.
It challenges the old idea that self recognition is this exclusive club with humans great apes, dolphins, maybe elephants. But then you see a house cat doing something that looks suspiciously like checking himself out, and suddenly the line gets fuzzy.
And that's the thing. We've built so many of our assumptions on what we think intelligence should look like language, tools, mirrors. But animals might be showing awareness in ways we're not trained to interpret.
A parrot asking what color is obvious. A cat quietly testing whether the reflection moves when he moves. That's subtle, but it still hints at an internal experience. Curiosity, maybe even a sense of self.
And once you start seeing those moments, you can't unsee them. You start wondering how many species have been trying to tell us something about their inner world and we just aren't listening.
Or we didn't have the right experiments, because for decades the mirror test was treated like the gold standard. But now researchers are realizing it's more like one narrow doorway into consciousness, not the whole house.
Which means Alex wasn't an outlier. He was a wake up call, a reminder that consciousness might be far more widespread and far more varied than we ever imagined.
And honestly, that's the exciting part. It opens the door to asking better questions. Not, Are animals conscious? But how are they conscious? What does their version of awareness feel like? And if animals show flashes of self awareness, the next big question is how they understand where they are in the world. And honestly, pets give us some of the most surprising examples of that.
They really do. Homing behavior isn't just something wild animals do. There are so many documented cases of cats and dogs traveling unbelievable distances to get back to their families or their original homes.
Dogs, especially. There are reports of dogs finding their way across entire states after being separated. Yeah, we've seen that in No Homeward Bound. No training, no maps, nothing. Some researchers think they might be using a combination of scent trails, magnetic sensitivity, and memory of landmarks, but none of that fully explains the long distance cases.
And cats might be even more mysterious. They're known for something called psi traveling. That's the unofficial term researchers use when a cat returns home from a place that it's never been before. There are cases of indoor cats traveling dozens or even hundreds of miles crossing roads, fields, neighborhoods they've never seen and still ending up on their own doorstep.
Which brings us right back to Holly. The indoor tortie, you say?
I just say torties. You they're
Torties. It's
tortoise shell,
a
but
tortoise shell.
it's a calico cat.
Honestly, when I first read tortoise shell, I was like, okay, it's a turtle. And then like I went further on, I was like, it's a fucking cat. I
A
was like, what
tortie or
the fuck?
tortoise shell tortie or tortoise shell cat is a calico cat, but their coat is it's not in big patches of color, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, clearly I've figured out that it was a cat, but yeah. So I was imagining this turtle traveling 200 miles, and then when I read that a cat was staggering into the backyard named Holly, I was like, well, son of a bitch. That wasn't a turtle at all.
Nope. That'd be amazing, though. I wonder how long that trip would take.
Probably a lot longer.
Probably.
Which brings us right back to Holly, the indoor tortoiseshell who traveled nearly 200 miles to get home. No outdoor experience, no familiar territory, no obvious cues. She just kept going in the right direction.
And that's the part that fascinates scientists. Because with pets, you can't chalk it up to migration patterns or evolutionary instincts. These are individual animals making individual choices driven by memory, attachment, and something internal that tells them where home is.
It suggests that homing isn't just navigation, it's cognition, it's motivation, it's an emotional pull strong enough to guide an animal through completely unfamiliar territory.
And when you look at it that way, homing behavior becomes another window into animal consciousness, how they think, what they remember, and what matters to them.
Looking at how some pets have found their way home, making choices, showing attachment, it becomes harder to pretend their minds are simple.
And it's not just pets. Across the animal world, we're seeing behaviors that don't fit the old idea of animals as little biological robots. From bees playing with wooden balls to octopi avoiding pain, animals once thought to be robotic are showing signs of deeper mental activity. These findings are shifting how researchers think about consciousness in the animal kingdom. Have you seen the thing where octopus just punch fish sometimes?
Just punch fish? No, I don't think I have.
Really? Yeah,
No.
they do it just for the hell of it, apparently.
You gotta get your rocks off somehow, I guess.
I mean, maybe they haven't, maybe the octopus and that fish had a beef that like the person that observed it wasn't aware of. But it just seemed like the octopus just punches the fish for no reason sometimes.
I was gonna say
I don't know.
there's a high chance that the fish that those particular fish
Just really
like
piss off the
yeah,
octopus.
maybe they just bullied the octopus, yeah.
I don't know. Maybe the octopus
Or,
just doesn't like that kind of fish.
they're those kind of fish like the clownfish from Finding Nemo where they're like, gonna touch the butt.
I touched it. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe the octopus is racist against that fish. Who knows?
Yeah, could be.
He only punches
Speciesist.
that one. I don't know if it's just a particular kind of fish or just any fish, but it just seemed to be random from what I saw. It's kind of
So,
funny
what?
though.
Those bee experiments were incredible. Researchers set up a little arena with tiny wooden balls, no food, no reward, nothing useful about them, and the bumblebees still rolled the balls around on purpose. Not once or twice, but repeatedly, almost like they were playing.
That's funny. The key part is that the bees weren't trained. They weren't being conditioned. They chose to interact with the balls even when there was no benefit. That's one of the markers of play behavior in higher animals, doing something just because it's enjoyable or stimulating.
If we look at octopi, when they're exposed to something mildly painful, they don't just react in the moment. They avoid the place where it happened later,
And
showing
punch a
stress
fish.
behaviors,
Sorry.
punching fishes, and even seeking out areas that make them feel better, like punching fishes.
Mm-hmm.
That suggests not just sensation, but an emotional component.
It's just stress relief. That's all it is.
Yeah, probably.
Just punching the fish. It makes
It's
them
like
feel better.
punching a punching bag.
Mm-hmm.
Take some out.
Fish don't have feelings, they say.
Yeah,
That's what. So even the octopus think it.
yeah. That fish isn't feeling anything. It's just like pushed out, pushed through the current. It's like, what the fuck was that?
All of this pushes the same idea. Consciousness isn't a single switch that only flips on in humans or a handful of smart species. It's a spectrum. Different animals express different animals express it in different ways, but the mental lights are on in far more places than we used to believe.
And the more we uncover, the more it feels like we're just scratching the surface. If bees can play, if octopi can experience something like pain, if pets can navigate hundreds of miles, what else is happening in the minds of animals we haven't studied yet?
That's kind of exciting, really. Every new discovery pushes the boundary a little further, forces us to rethink what consciousness really is and who gets to have it.
Dr. Anna Wilkinson, a behavioral biologist at the University of Lincoln, has studied reptiles for years. People used to think that reptiles were just reactive, like living robots, she said. But we found compelling evidence that they can learn, remember, and even solve problems. Her work, along with that of many others, has helped reshape the field of animal behavior. One well known example is the red footed tortoise. Scientists trained these tortoises to complete a maze. Not only did they learn how to get to the reward, but they also remembered the solution months later. Even when the maze changed, they adjusted their strategy, a clear sign of flexible thinking. Bearded dragons have also shown surprising skills. In one experiment, they watched other lizards perform a task and learned how to do it themselves. This kind of learning by watching others was once thought to be limited to mammals and birds. Zebrafish and cuttlefish have also demonstrated unexpected talents. Zebrafish have shown curiosity toward new objects, and cuttlefish have proven they can remember past events, like getting punched by octopus. These actions suggest the presence of memory and interest, two key parts of consciousness.
And all of this, pets finding their way home, bees playing, octopi showing emotional responses and anger issues. It paints a picture of animals having inner lives that are richer than we expected.
Once a person accepts that animals have thoughts, preferences, maybe even emotions, you start bumping into a bigger, harder question. Do they have anything like spiritual awareness?
Scientists don't use the word spiritual, but there are studies that hint at animals experiencing something beyond basic cognition. Not supernatural, just deeper. Things like grief, ritual, connection, and behaviors that look a lot like meaning making.
Yeah, look at elephants. They're one of the most documented examples. When a member of their herd dies, they return to the body, touch the bones, stand quietly for long periods. Some researchers describe it as a mourning behavior. Others call it a kind of ritual.
And it's not just elephants. Dogs have been observed staying beside the bodies of their companions. Cats bring offerings to owners who are sick or grieving. Horses will stand vigil over injured herd mates. These aren't random reactions. They're responses that look like empathy, connection, maybe even reverence.
There's also the research on animals sensing illness or emotional distress in humans, dogs detecting seizures before they happen, cats curling up with people in hospice settings. Scientists explain it through scent cues and pattern recognition, but the emotional component is harder to pin down.
And then there are the cases that don't fit neatly into any scientific box. Animals traveling long distances to return to a deceased owner's grave, or showing sudden changes in behavior right before a natural disaster. We can't call it spiritual, but we also can't fully explain it either.
What we can say is that animals seem to have some awareness of connection, loss, presence, and maybe even something like purpose. Not in a human religious sense, but in a way that suggests their inner world is more layered than instinct alone.
And that's where this conversation naturally goes next. If animals can think, feel, remember, and grieve, what does that say about the depth of their awareness? And that leads to the question of animals having a spiritual dimension. I really do think animals can sense things spiritually, things humans can't always see or pick up on.
A lot of people feel that way. And honestly, there are patterns in animal behavior that make you stop and think. Not supernatural claims, just moments that don't fit neatly into the scientific boxes we have.
There are so many stories. One of my own experiences are of the family dog chasing things my family could not see into corners and up walls, barking. Cats I have had that would stare out into an empty hallway before I would hear footsteps when no one else was home. There are stories of pets reacting to something in a room no one else notices, animals comforting people right before a major emotional event, or acting strangely right before disasters. It feels like they're tuned into a frequency we're not.
And even researchers acknowledge that animals have sensory abilities we don't. Dogs detect changes in human chemistry. Cats pick up on micro movements and shifts in energy. Horses respond to emotional tension before a person even speaks. When you put all that together, it's not a stretch to think they're perceiving layers of the world we miss.
When you combine that with everything we've talked about, like self recognition, emotion, memory, homing behavior, it paints a picture of animals having an inner world that's not just cognitive, but maybe intuitive in a way we don't fully understand.
That could be part of where the idea of spiritual awareness comes in. Not religion, not belief systems, just a deeper sensitivity, a way of perceiving connection, presence, or meaning that humans sometimes lose as we get older.
I feel like there might be an entire dimension of awareness, emotional, intuitive, maybe even spiritual, that we just don't recognize.
If any animal embodies picking up on shifts in energy, emotion, or spiritual presence, it's cats. They've been linked to spiritual awareness for thousands of years. Every culture that lived alongside them noticed the same thing. Cats react to things we don't notice. They stare into corners. They move with purpose, and they seem to know before we do.
Which is exactly why they've long been referred to as familiars. Not in the Hollywood sense of a witch's sidekick, but in the older meaning, an animal that's sensitive to the unseen, an intuitive companion, a kind of bridge between the physical and the spiritual.
Now, historically, people noticed that cats behave differently from other animals. They were independent, quiet, observant. They'd sit in doorways, windows, and thresholds, places that symbolically mark the boundary between one space and another. and folklore that made them guardians of the in between.
And then there's the way they react to people. Cats gravitate towards certain individuals, avoid others, and show up during emotional moments like they're reading the room on a deeper level. That kind of sensitivity made people believe they weren't just pets, they were companions with a foot in another realm.
So when people called cats familiars, it wasn't about magic spells. It was about intuition, awareness, the sense that cats perceive things, energies, and moods and presences that humans overlook.
Cats have always acted like they're aware of more than what's right in front of them. Maybe that's why the idea of familiar never really went away. When you talk about cats having this deeper awareness, it makes sense why people still see them as guardians, not in a mystical fantasy way, just in the way they show up at the exact moment someone needs them.
One of the most famous examples of this is Oscar, the therapy cat in Rhode Island. He lived in a nursing home and consistently curled up with residents in the hours before they passed. Doctors documented it for years. No one claimed it was supernatural, just that he sensed something changing in the body long before humans could. And it's you bringing this cat up, it also reminds me there was another story of a cat that would sit in the doorway of like uh what do you call those, the hospice. It's
Mhm.
this cat just hung out in this hospice, and they would know that somebody was about to pass when the cat sat in the doorway, and they knew they passed when the cat would walk down the hallway a certain direction. It was always in one direction after the person passed. The
Mhm.
cat would always walk off into the one direction. It was a very interesting thing, like the
Mhm.
cat was leading the person off somewhere.
Yeah, that is interesting. Oscar wasn't reacting randomly. He was making choices, seeking out specific people at specific moments. That's awareness on a level we don't fully understand.
There are also cases of cats alerting families to danger, house fires, carbon monoxide leaks, medical emergencies. One cat in Canada woke its owner repeatedly during the night, and it turns out that man was having a heart attack. Paramedics said the timing saved his life.
And then there are the emotional guardians, cats who refuse to leave someone's side during grief, illness, or depression. Researchers studying animal assisted therapy have found that cats respond to human micro expressions and changes in routine. They pick up on emotional shifts faster than most people do.
Which loops right back into spiritual awareness. Not ghosts or magic, just a sensitivity to presence, emotion, and energy that humans often overlook. Cats notice when something is off, whether it's physical, emotional, or environmental.
Cats seem to watch, respond, and protect. And they do it with a kind of quiet intuition that feels deeper than instinct.
It's a reminder that consciousness isn't just about problem solving or language. Sometimes it's about connection, the awareness, the ability to sense what another being needs, even when they can't say it out loud.
How does science, excuse me, how does science even study something like consciousness, intuition, spiritual awareness? None of that fits neatly into a lab.
Scientists study the unseen by looking at patterns, behaviors that can't be explained by simple reflexes, things like anticipation and emotional attunement, or animals reacting to changes before humans notice anything.
So they measure the measurable parts like brain activity, stress hormones, sensory cues, decision making. But even when you break it down, there's always this leftover piece, something that doesn't fit the model.
That leftover piece is where it gets interesting. Researchers studying animal intuition call it predictive behavior. They'll say a dog senses a seizure coming because of chemical changes, or a cat reacts to emotional shifts because of microexpressions. Those explanations are real, but they don't cover every case.
There are moments where the science explains the mechanism, but not the experience. The animal isn't just reacting, they're choosing, comforting, guarding. That's consciousness. And for some people, that's also where spirituality begins.
Even scientists admit that consciousness itself is still a mystery. They can map the brain, measure neurons firing, and track behavior, but they can't fully explain subjective experience. They call it the hard problem of consciousness.
Which is basically science way of saying we can see the effects, but we don't totally understand the source.
And when you look at animals, pets sensing danger, therapy cats predicting death, dogs reacting to emotional states, it starts to feel like they're tapping into something we don't have language for yet.
Science won't call it supernatural, but when you strip away the labels, it kind of is. It's something beyond our usual senses, something we can observe but not fully explain.
That's what makes this whole topic compelling. Consciousness and spirituality might not be separate things, they might just be two ways of describing the same unseen layer of awareness.
Interestingly, I have been seeing headlines about scientists saying that consciousness might not come entirely from the brain.
Yeah, and that theory isn't fringe anymore. There have been recent papers and debates where researchers question the old brain as generator model. Some scientists argue that the brain might not produce consciousness so much as receive or filter it. It's still controversial, but it's being discussed seriously.
And even the people who disagree admit there's a mystery. Neuroscience can map every neural signal, every firing pattern, every chemical change, but it still can't explain why any of that produces the feeling of being you. That gap is what they call the hard problem of consciousness.
Then you have researchers pointing out that humans naturally think of mind and body as separate. One study even showed that people intuitively imagine consciousness as something that could exist outside the physical brain. Scientists call that intuitive dualism.
Which is wild because it means even our instincts lean toward the idea that consciousness isn't just neurons firing. And when you combine that with the fact that science still can't explain subjective experience, it opens the door to bigger possibilities.
And no one's saying supernatural, but when scientists start asking whether the brain is a generator or a receiver, or whether consciousness might be a fundamental property of the universe, like mass or charge, that's a huge shift.
That lines up with what we see in animals their intuition, their emotional sensitivity, their ability to sense things we miss. It all hints at awareness coming from somewhere deeper than just biology.
It's like science is circling around the same idea people have felt for centuries that consciousness might be bigger than the brain, and animals might be tapped into it in ways we aren't.
When you step back and look at everything we've talked about consciousness, intuition, emotion, connection it becomes clear that animals aren't just background characters in our world. They are participants, observers, companions with inner lives we're only beginning to understand. Science gives us tools to measure behavior, map brains, and track patterns. But even the most advanced research admits there are limits. There are moments, quiet, subtle, deeply personal, where an animal's awareness slips outside the boundaries of what we can quantify. Moments where a pet senses danger before it arrives, comforts someone without being asked, or reacts to something we can't see. Researchers won't call that supernatural, they'll call it intuition, sensitivity, predictive behavior. But whatever name you give it, it points to the same truth. Animals experience the world in ways we don't fully grasp. And maybe that's the part we need to respect the most. Because acknowledging animal consciousness isn't just about intelligence tests or brain scans, it's about recognizing that these beings feel, perceive, and connect in ways that matter. It's about honoring the possibility that their awareness, whether emotional, intuitive, or spiritual, runs deeper than we've allowed ourselves to believe. So, as we close, I want to leave you with this. If animals are conscious, if they grieve, remember, choose, and protect, if they sense things we overlook, then our responsibility to them isn't just scientific, it's ethical, it's emotional, it's human. They're not lesser, they're not simple, they're not here just to live alongside us. They are here with us, experiencing their own version of the world, rich with meaning we may never fully understand. I feel that is the most humbling part of all.